So welcome everyone to our Tuesday night Pau Hana here at First Unitarian Church of Honolulu. My name is TJ. I'm the minister here. As some of you know, my pronouns are he, him, and his. And this is a time when, I don't know, we get a little more informal here at the church and just, take some time to get some questions answered or have a chat, things like that. Some weeks when we don't have a guest, we do trivia or we do other things like that. But actually it was in October, so almost 2 months ago, we did a questions and answers with TJ, where I just said I'll answer any questions that come about the church or about theology or about faith or anything. And if I don't know an answer, I'll just make one up. And so a good time will be had by all. So yeah, I know I've gotten some questions recently about sort of the future of some things at the church, if we want to talk about that, or really anything. You don't have to ask out loud. If you want to ask anonymously or anything like that, you can use the chat function and if you don't know how to use that, you can let us know. But yeah, that's going to be the format tonight. I think next week, I don't want to say for sure, lest our guest can't do it, but I'm pretty sure we're going to have some real fun. But I should hear very soon whether it's going to work out or not. And yeah, and so that's kind of where we are today. So yeah, any questions to start us off? Anything on anyone's mind? We could also play Stump the Minister. It'll be easy to do.
Okay, I have one, so maybe I'll
Sure.
start then. I'm getting a bit bothered some days seeing the Facebook Live thing up there, given how incredibly harmful Facebook has been to our culture. I'm wondering why we're doing that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not a fan of Facebook myself, personally. And I think we all know each other, but if not, Richard, do you want to just say, hi, I'm Richard, and yeah, for in the future, we'll just introduce ourselves.
Hi, I'm Richard.
What happened? Yeah. What happened was, one of the things is that Facebook, whether we like it or not, I don't know, you probably can hear where the end of this is going, is one of the major ways that people, specifically at our church, interact. It's how a lot of information gets shared. It's also how a lot of people who've left and gone farther away interact, especially people under a certain age. Now, I know that more and more younger people have gotten away from Facebook too. Like, Facebook is waning in relevance, even in many circles. You would not have to convince me, very much about the ills of Facebook. Partly we did the streaming because we needed to stream I'm just giving you the real nuts and bolts. We needed to stream the Thanksgiving event because we were worried we were gonna have too many people for our Zoom license, because someone said they were gonna invite all these people. And so we figured out a way to do it. And then our first Sunday, we had something like 300 or 400 views. So then we also realized that it is reaching people. And there may be better ways to do it. I am open to that. And I think that Facebook, in a way that, it's like, it's a brand now at this point. And it does very divisive things. I do think it's a monopoly that is going to be broken up under the next administration also, and it will change and morph in that way. But to not use the other argument would be that to not use Facebook is sort of like, do we not use tinfoil for something that's ravaging? The mining of aluminum foil is ravaging, parts of the country. I use pennies. Copper is terrible. I know it's environmental. It's not exactly the same thing. I mean, Facebook is pernicious in what it does to divide communities and the psyche, in many senses. So maybe it really is worse. And I'm open to not having it anymore, but so many people who are so distant were so grateful for it, that's really why we have it, is just to improve access. what I would like in the future, I've made no real bones about it. Like the size of our church means that sort of, and our budget, frankly, is that Zoom works well, but getting a license to live stream, which is a totally different thing. It's like really upping the amount you're spending on worship, would also require a lot of cameras and a lot of other things. The other advantage to Facebook Live is it's super simple because it goes right through Zoom. So it's the McDonald's answer. Everyone's doing it. We know it's bad for us, but they make it so simple between soccer practice and guitar lesson. It's just where we stop off. So now
Okay,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say I won't persevere with this.
Okay.
I have pretty strong views on it, but I would just like to suggest that if you have a chance, watch the Social Dilemma on Netflix.
Yeah.
You're going to get if you want to get a sense of the kind of damage that Facebook is doing.
Yeah. I like to imagine we are also content on Facebook that's undoing some of that damage. So that's another aspect. But yeah, so that's some of the answers, the real practical, real world answers. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Good.
Sure. Absolutely. Any other questions? We all just came to see what other questions other people had. It's good.
Oh, just for the company.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, if there are, one question I know has been on some people's minds is, we had Kathy Cartwright Chow last week on Pau Hana. She's the retired educator at First Unitarian Church of Portland, Oregon, and she talked a lot about the process of bringing a religious educator and something like that. And I see Nan saying, what about RE? Kathy Cartwright Chow was fabulous. Let's follow up. I read your mind, Nan. Yeah, I mean, one conversation I'd love to have, if someone could mute, I'm not sure who that is that I'm reverbing with. Yeah, is what are we gonna, RE, if say we're coming back in June, which was the plan, looks like there's some kind of inoculation starting to happen. I'm not saying it's going to be June, but say we're coming back in June. One of the questions I kind of have for the congregation, if you don't have questions for me, I'm going to start asking you questions, is what do we want to invest in bringing RE back? I mean, we all know that religious education, especially for young people, and religious education begins at birth and goes through our last days living. So it's not just young people, but how we want to approach that. Just so people know, to give you a little background, we've had sort of a run of religious educating and learning community people involved with the church who have kind of started and then piddled out for different reasons. None of them are, I don't like the church. They're always something family or moving or other, health concerns. And so it's been a real challenge to have a coordinator or someone at the church doing that work. And as much as we'd love to say, well, it should just all be volunteers or it should all be this, I mean, every single person will tell you that having a director level position for religious education is the real way to get a program together. So that's one thing we haven't had in a while. And partly in this time, the other aspect that's happened with young people in particular is they don't want to look at another screen. That they do screens all day for school. And so those of you who are here should know there's virtually nothing really happening from the church to our young people in the learning community. And it's a conversation I'll be having with the learning community, or is kind of ongoing, and with the young families. But yeah, I'm not really sure what will happen, but my vote is to bring someone on at some point in the near future in a halftime or more than just a coordinator level, to do this work. I personally just believe that if we don't, it's really just losing the next future generation of the church. And even if it fails at some point, I feel like if we don't try, it's going to be, we're just really going to regret it. Anyway, I'm just speaking my mind about what I think would be helpful. But and I don't there is, like I said, there's conversations ongoing about what to do with that. The other option is, there are people, I see a hand, Nancy, I'll just finish this thought and go to you. The other thing is that there are a lot of underemployed, if not out of work, educators right now sitting at home. Not, they're just like a lot of people who are out of work, and they may not be here, but my question is, I wonder what someone like that could do to bridge the gap from now until we are together again, and whether something like that. And just for those of you who don't know, the budget has about $17,000 a year for educators and a coordinator, and to date I think we've spent maybe 4,000 of that. So it's not like the will of the congregation isn't there. And so I'm always, this is a budget line. If anyone's been in a board meeting, you've heard me. It's a budget line. It's the only budget line I want to see overspent. I want to go above budget for caring for the learning community, and we have never even hit the budget for it. And I know the treasurer is on this call, and but I think he's back. I think he's got my back on this one. So, Mike, I'm only talking about like 5 to 7% over. Okay, nothing nuts. So, yeah. So I know Nancy had her hand first, and then we'll go to Richard. Nancy, go ahead.
I was just thinking, could RE be done in a park, even before we get so we can come back into the building? Because I think that if they could see each other and be together, it would really build something good for them.
Yeah. It's a great idea, and it kind of comes down to there not being a single kind of person coordinating it right now. But partly is that the parents are so overextended right now that even to plan it, like having someone who would do it is, I think, partly what they're looking for. Yeah.
I was thinking a less employed teacher, but I strongly feel that it needs to be Unitarian Universalist.
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah. Thanks, Nancy. Richard?
Yes, I've been mulling around this question for quite a while. I'm assuming that we will be back into the church eventually, although I hope
Richard, can you speak out, dear?
Yes, I can.
I'll get the mic.
Karen will go get the mic, and that'll help. I'm assuming we will be back in the church eventually, although I hope we will still continue offering the Zoom or something. But one thing I've always found curious about religious education, TJ, you talk about life plan, and yet when we've had an RE program, getting adults to attend in our RE kinds of things seems to be difficult. I'm wondering, what could be done to stimulate that. And because whenever we, that's RE and then there's story for all ages, whenever those two things are said, even though it says for all ages, everybody thinks, oh, that's the children's story. RE is just for children. How do we bridge that? Any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I do have some ideas. Also changing it from religious education to learning community. I've tried to do that, and people just look at me like I'm crazy, or like, what are you talking about? It's RE in it. So I do think there needs to be a bit of a cultural change around this, because when you start thinking of it as RE or Sunday school, people kind of check out.
Yep.
And for a faith tradition for whom education and learning and faith development is so important, is so central, it is a bit of a bummer. I mean, one of the things when I was a 3/4 time minister that I just was very clear I wasn't doing was part of the education and teaching piece. There just wasn't, there's no way that would just go into, it would push me right into full time. And then what happened was the pandemic happened. And now I'm spending 5 to 6 more hours a week just doing worship preparation for videos and things like that. So a lot of that extra time got gobbled up, you know, in the way we're now dealing with worship, and also with pastoral care matters that went up much more and have been a lot more active. So certainly one of the things that would be more attractive, just be honest, is the minister leading it, if it's adult ed, you know, or learning community stuff for older. So that's one aspect. Now, for some of you who don't like me, that would not be attractive. And so the idea would be having someone, or who I should say, who've heard enough of me. We get it. We get you every Sunday. Like, we want someone else. So that would be part of how having a colleague who is religious education directors, like, we would discuss what would work better and who would be better to lead something, or if there's a congregant who has real training in something. Yes, that's very funny. Adult RE. I love it. I love it, man.
When I, for several years at Tripler, I led a leadership journal club. And the only reason that anybody with any brass showed up is because the general typically showed up. If they knew the general wasn't going to be there, hardly anybody showed up, because it meant FaceTime with the general. So same thing with the minister, I think.
For some, but I want to just be aware, like, you know, there are some people who, you know, an educator, a religious educator who's credentialed and been through that process, just has so many tools that, I mean, I have some of those tools, but it's a very different immersive experience with folks who've really studied and focused on pedagogy and learning, and different didactic ways of teaching, you know. And so having either doing it together or having that available for people is also something I want to do. But I always thought I would teach, like, coming here when I went full time, I always thought I'd be teaching something in the spring and something in the fall, whether it's finding your own theology or the adult OWL, something like that. And partly it's just this has taken over. And I do think after study leave that I take between Christmas and the beginning of January, I'll be looking at something to do for the spring, and we'll try to just do it on screens and see how it goes. But partly 2020 was just getting our legs under us, trying to handle this. And so there'll be some aspect of that. And I hope the combination of me doing that and then looking at the learning community and who can, I'm just gonna mute you guys. Oh, there we go. And then looking at whatever the young families group wants to do for caring for young children, that the combination, you know, will start to move us in that direction. Yeah, I see Karen's hand, I think. Yeah, and then Mike.
What I'm hearing from parents is that there's no way they can get their kids onto another Zoom function at the moment. And if parents are trying to get together as parents, they still have the pull. There's no one to watch the kids. I mean, and when we did try to see if we could get together in the park, and when we said goodbye to Carmen as sort of a drive-through thing, that worked really well. That was lovely. So I think everybody would like to. It's just everybody is still really freaked out. Yeah. And overworked, overwhelmed. Yeah. And Bodie's ready for his close-up. So, I mean, and that's the other thing, is I don't really know people's comfort level, because if we said we'll do like a children's chapel, say, after worship, you know, say we'll do 10 o'clock and then but show up at noon for like lunch and whatever. But everyone's different. Like, you know, some people want to stay in their car, others would be okay. Like there's like a church right by me, the Lutheran church, Our Redeemer, they spray paint circles, you know, 6 feet away from each other, and everyone has to stay in their circle, which is kind of like a huge Connect 4 game. But, you know, so there might be ways to do something like that. Again,
it's part of a conversation that I've really only been sort of invited into more recently out of my own very aggressive attempt to get this going, so that when we all get back, by aggressive I mean passive aggressive, of course, having a guest who's a religious educator, then having a Sunday, and then having a day I'm going to answer questions and I pick the topic. So I'm clearly moving us towards something.
Love you, TJ.
Gently, but part of the discussion is with the young families to figure out what that comfort level is, and if the answer is that there's just no happiness or comfort doing anything, I don't want us to not be doing anything as far as like potentially planning, like getting a coach in, getting an advisor, even if Kathy could take a few hours a week to help us like look at what we're doing and look at our curriculum, so that when we are back together, we are hitting the ground running, and not just wondering what we're going to be doing, and maybe even having different different plans and things like that. But I agree, getting kids on a screen is not helping them right now.
Not right now.
So, yeah. But Mike had his hand up right when Karen did, and then we'll go to the young square. Mike.
Right. I just wanted to tip my hat to Mike Young and his able then assistant, Nan Kleiber, who was our RE director at that time. Mike offered wonderful adult education courses, usually one in the fall and one in the spring. And we had courses on Build Your Theology. We had an Old Testament course, a New Testament course. We had a course on the Jesus Project. I think I've got the wrong name there, what it's called.
Seminar, yeah.
I think the last one that was done in that series was the one on doubt. We read that book together called Doubt. And those were all wonderful courses. In my opinion, they were quite well attended. I would certainly attend. I loved those courses. And that would be great if we could return to something along those lines. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid of Zoom.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely the model we wanted to be moving toward. And that was always my vision of going full-time ministry, was to add that component. And that's why in January, I really want that to come to fruition, now that we're not through, but now that we're in a more manageable space of the pandemic issues. The young family.
I was thinking if we could start as soon as possible, maybe having one time a month when the kids get together. I was thinking if all of us could have dogs, brought our dogs on leashes to a particular place, the children could play with the dogs and we could play with them and have an hour and go home, or have a picnic at home.
Yeah.
But I was thinking at least once a month, so the kids look forward to seeing each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are many, I'm in active conversation with the young families about what they really want and need. So all these ideas about things that folks are willing to show up to and help out with are great. So I appreciate that, Nancy. That's great. What's that, Mike?
Several of the churches that I have served over the years have talked about and never brought to fruition an idea that involves parenting by people who are not the parent of the kids. A grandparent program where we adopt, each of us adults adopt and get involved with a kid member of the congregation. Because one of the characteristics, especially in this COVID time, is that kids have really narrow opportunities to know anybody except immediate family members.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Pen Pal program has been pretty successful that we have going on right now between members, between our younger members and members with more seasoning. And so, yeah, I agree. And that having something more, maybe even that growing into something more interactive makes a lot of sense. So, but we have a really good start on it, I think. Yeah, Mike.
Nancy and I, neither one of us have heard about that.
No, that's not true.
Oh, I haven't.
I have a little boy I've been writing to, but I have not heard back from him.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, just keep writing.
Just send another one. Yeah.
Just
I sent
keep
him a Christmas
sending
card
them.
today. Poor
Oh,
little
good.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I'd love to do is eventually have a get together with your pen pal sort
Yeah.
of party. And I was
Well-
planning that sort of like in May.
Yeah. That's a
Well,
great
we'll
idea.
have to put yours on Zoom, huh, Marie?
Yeah, I was just gonna say Leia's pen pal is Kara, and but I plan on keeping it up. In fact, I just sent her, oh, excuse me, Leia just sent her a card this week. So,
Yeah.
you know, the get together would be hard, but we're still pen paling. Sometimes I also send her stuff, internet stuff, cards from American Greetings and stuff like that. So I do both. I do post and internet cards.
Good.
Me too.
Leia's very efficient at her technology, I guess, to be in touch
Well-
with the children.
And I just got in the mail, you know how companies send you free cards?
Mhm.
Of course, as a lead for you to buy, but I just got some beautiful butterfly cards, and I opened the envelope up and I thought, I know immediately who these are for.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would be wonderful to move that, like Mike said, into even a more full expression, when we're back together, of maybe even getting together and giving the parents a break, and it's not really free babysitting. It's more just like intergenerational get-togethers. I think it'd be wonderful. Thanks, Mike.
Let the kids play.
And I know that Nan also was helped me remember there is a program that some of the parents have put together for themselves. They're calling it OWL, but for anti-racism, OBFAR, OBFAR, and they're getting. I've presented at it, and other people have presented at it, where people are trying to get better at different subjects around anti-racism, how we're teaching our children, how we behave ourselves. So there is a really strong and actually a successful. So for them, what's working is once a month, like not every week, not even every 2 weeks, but they're doing that once a month to try to focus in and do that. So we are laying some groundwork to continue that getting together. And if they carve out that time, there may be other programs they want to do after that. So it's not that nothing is happening. I'm being very dramatic as usual. But what's happening is all stuff I'd love to be keeping alive, like, tending as we go forward into coming back together. So, yeah. Now we've done about half our time on Facebook and the future of our learning community. So if there's I'm happy to keep doing it if people have questions or anything like that. But if there's other things that have come up since we started, or other people have logged on, if you have questions, now's the time. Mike's got his hand, and then we'll go to Esther.
Right. A couple of weeks ago at Pau Hana, I asked you to tell us the story of how you went from the law into the ministry. And
Yes.
the story you told was a great surprise to me. It was so different from what I had imagined. And I guess I haven't looked at you quite the same since. And only gets better. It only gets better, TJ. But I had a follow-up question, and that is more specific. How did you happen to choose? I understand you were in corporate law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, hey, there aren't that many there isn't a lot of mystery to this one. My father is a lawyer, and he is a patent lawyer. And when I got out of law school, it was very lucky that I got a job with one of his friends from law school. And it happened to be in intellectual property law, which is what my father practiced. I grew up hearing about just constantly. I sort of knew what patent law was. I knew what other things were. And I just, that's kind of what I fell into. And I was lucky. It was what I wanted to do. I mean, it's what I studied. I worked in publishing. I had been an actor. I know music. So different intellectual property things seemed appropriate, for me. So I just went for it. And yeah, I fell into that. And it kind of went from there. It started at a small boutique firm. Oh, bye, Esther. Oh, I just missed her. But it started at a small boutique firm working with celebrities and helping them take their fame and turn it into brands like clothing, shoes, jewelry, that kinds of, like consumer product licensing. The firm I worked for literally wrote the book on character licensing that everyone has if you study licensing at all. And then that job helped me get one that instead of working directly with celebrities, I was working more with large corporations that had many, many brands. So like the largest shoe manufacturers, the largest jewelry manufacturers. And so handling brands and, pharmaceutical companies, all the greats.
Can you name names?
Yeah, I mean, it's all matter of public record. I mean, I was basically the litigator for Pandora Jewelry all over the country. I worked for Genentech and Roche Pharmaceuticals a lot, that's I would enforce the Valium trademark against people who are misusing it and things like that.
We want to hear celebrities though.
Oh, so I mean, before, I was Jessica Simpson's lawyer. So I would go to her mom's house to check out like the new shoe lines and things like that in Los Angeles, and handled a lot of her litigation and made sure. And we took her from no brand to, she's now, I don't know if you know, but her shoe line is one of the most successful shoe lines in history. She's worth $1 billion, mostly from character and her licensing her name to apparel. So we started that program for her. And there's others. I mean, I had my own personal clients, like Butch Hartman, who started Fairly Odd Parents. He's a good friend of mine still in Nickelodeon, and I'd help him with side projects and other things like that. A lot of other artists. I mean, Jessica Simpson was probably the biggest one. And you have to remember, this was about a decade ago, when Jessica Simpson was a big deal. Now she is a big deal in apparel, but not so much in music. So just give you an idea, some of those things. But so that is some of what happened. My father was a lawyer. I got a job in law, and I just kind of rode that. I tell anyone now thinking about law school, only go unless you've got a guaranteed job when you're out. Otherwise, if you're going for free. But if you're going into debt to go to law school, I tell people you better be sure you have a job when you're getting out. So that's a little bit about that. And I have mentioned before in a sermon, so it's out there, that the Koch brothers were clients of mine too. And I wasn't particularly happy about it, but Koch Industries always paid their bill on time, that's for sure. So so that's a little bit about that. There was, I could go on and on. There's a lot of stuff going on around those times, but yeah.
I thought Jessica Simpson was Homer's wife.
That's Marge Simpson.
Oh.
So
That's
yeah.
oh, goodness.
But yeah, that is some of the I'm getting a question here. There's a question sort of about hope in this time and managing hope. I think about hope a lot, actually. I think there's a famous line, hope is a dangerous thing. And usually like an autocratic or sort of authoritarian person says something like that. It's usually in the context of gross human rights violations or trying to keep people down. You don't want to give them hope. It's a dangerous thing because then there could be an uprising or some kind of revolution. But this question is more about managing the difference between hope and rational or reasonable expectations. I read a quote recently that said somewhere along the line, I'm just paraphrasing it. The word realist is what's commonly used. I said this the other day, I think, in a conversation. Realist is what's commonly used for negative thinking, and sort of imagination or complete impossibility is what's used for positive thinking. I don't know how that happened in our learning, our way of learning and teaching, but it did happen. And I'm not saying everyone, but like in our faith, I think we lean toward such positivity or positivity about things that people look at us a little bit like pie in the sky, like completely like imagining some other possible world that doesn't really exist. And so I think we do fall into this, and other religions do. I think all people of faith kind of fall into literally imagining a world into existence that doesn't exist yet. That's at the Christian message is part of building the kingdom of heaven. And many other, even in Buddhism, there's like, you know, making this change, being a light unto those around you. There are many other ways of looking at hope in that way. For me, as when I was a chaplain, we were warned about hope because some things, there may not be hope for someone who is ill, like, and family members who keep saying there's hope to people who have something that is going to end their physical life can be very dangerous, because that person wants to placate their loved ones. At the same time, they want to try to embrace the reality of their situation and manage it with as much care and comfort. And so a chaplain going in saying, oh yeah, you got to fight it, you got to do everything you can, and doesn't really help the situation. And so one of the things we often managed in the healthcare situation is hope, and what is good hope and what is sort of fantastic hope that just really isn't true. And so it's a tough line to balance. I know a lot of people are dealing with a lot of health crises right now. A lot of people are out of work. A lot of people are just doing everything they can to make that next choice. And, you know, for me in the end, and I've gone on a little long about this, but I think the way I look at hope is in the same way of faith, you know, is that it's something I've got, but holding on to something to the detriment of other things that are coming along that are certain is not really hope. That starts to become something else, that starts to become fantasy. And I think hope requires something, a path I can move toward, a path I can move on. As long as there's some kind of path toward it, then I think that is like a hope that has meaning. If there's just no path and it's not there, it could be a beautiful fantasy and it could come true. I mean, some of the greatest things in the world, we had no idea were ever going to happen. And so it could happen, but I'm not sure that falls into the category of hope per se. So anyway, I don't know. I hope that kind of answers the question where those two things are. But Richard, did you have a comment on this? I saw you had your hand up.
I did. I put it in the chat, but it reminds me of the theological concept of possible impossibility.
Oh, and, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'll think of his name in a moment. The Catholic apologist Chesterton made a distinction between hope and optimism. He was against hope, but he was for optimism. And I'm afraid at this point I can't clarify his stance there, but that's an interesting source to go to.
So, I mean, I'll say this. There's another question I'm going to go to that someone asked privately, but hope, faith, God, there are a lot of words that it's like, well, tell me what you mean by that. You know, it can really mean such a wide range of things. I don't want to get into, you know, ontological discussions about, you know, words. I mean, I do, but we're not going to. But that's part of it. Like hope is like, it can be a range. You know, when some people says, oh man, I hope that happens, it's optimism. When and like I said, on the deathbed, when someone's like, I hope they're going to find a cure for this incurable thing in the 24 hours, you know what I mean, in the next 36 hours, that's a different kind of hope, but they're both hope. They just mean totally different things. So, David, I see your hand. I'm going to answer the question that someone sent in before that real quick. It's a question about a lot of educators are amplifying this message of decentering Christmas in a classroom, and also getting rid of this good and bad binary of Santa and Elf on the Shelf, things like that. And then the question is, do you think the focus on Christmas, both inside and outside the classroom, can be alienating and potentially harmful? I'm thinking with the shifting demographics and economic realities. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I see there's an elf on the shelf on the screen, which so the funny thing is I have some friends who they're on the absolute other end of the spectrum, who are deeply evangelical Christians who deplore the idea of secular Christmas and don't think Santa is real. They learn from their early, like, preschool age, Santa's not real, don't believe in it. And that good. Now, granted, this is all coming from a different place, because it's like they're thinking you're idealizing a saint, and anything that is remotely Roman Catholic is vehemently disposed of by those faiths. But it's always an interesting thing where I think super conservative people and super liberal people are kind of agreeing on the same results, even though the reason for it is different. And that always cracks me up. So yeah, I think decentering Christmas is a good idea. You'll notice if you look over the last few years that yes, we do sing a Christmas song here and there on Sunday worship, and we will this year. But a lot of my sermons, the sermons before Christmas, are more about dealing with the fallout of what Christmas, the downside really of a kind of a blue Christmas idea. And this year, more than a lot of years, I mean, people just don't have the money to be, I mean, the commercialism of Christmas is becoming crushing. And I think a lot of people are just not getting gifts this year. I mean, and this idea of Santa not producing enough of things to prove the worth of the child and that they were good enough all year is rough. I mean, it's a deep ethic. It's a deep fable that we tell in our culture for some reason, but I don't love it. And yeah, I think that making it certainly a centerpiece is problematic. If we mention it as much as we mention other things that happen for a vast majority of people, you know, that and what they represent, I mean, okay. But yeah, I guess that's kind of where I come out on it too. I don't know exactly what those posts read like, but I can hear the arguments kind of writing themselves. And yeah, we don't usually make a huge, now the pageant is a totally different story. So but we don't do the pageant on regular Sunday worship. Like, in a sense, we're doing like a one-off service for folks that want to sing the carols and that want to see Dennis be a camel, and that script is very specifically written to focus on the light of truth, not necessarily the light of love, not necessarily a savior per se in human form. So I would love also if we could fit something else in that week, and if we had some more, yeah, as you see, there's already a camel. I could also, and if also this year solstice is actually falling on the 20th, but I know a lot of churches have solstice services where they have rituals where they're giving things back over to the night, and I could see a solstice service in the future that makes a little more sense, since that's what Christmas came out of anyway. Which I think I preach on every single Christmas. So yeah, so that's to answer that question. I hope I touched on those, any concerns there. So David, you had a question.
Yeah, not just more of a comment that I'm sure won't help. I'm
be an optimist, David, come on.
Well, no, there's another line about that. No, I was just going to say that what came to my mind when you were talking about the flexibility of hope and the spectrum, and that it takes many forms. What came to my crazy mind was the Yogi Berraism when he said, "We're lost, but we're making good time."
Yeah. My grandfather loved all of those things. He'd say them to me as kids. I had no idea what they meant. I would just laugh because I knew I was supposed to. But well, now I'll throw the other.
Let me try the other one then. I haven't dredged this up for a while. The difference between an optimist and a pessimist is that the pessimist says, "Oh my God, things are so bad, things are rotten, things are it's horrible. It's such a downer. Things couldn't possibly get any worse." And the optimist says, "Sure it could.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Marie,
Don't
you had
lose
a
any
question.
sleep. Don't lose any sleep over that one.
Marie, you had a question?
Well, no, a comment. It's not a happy one, but it's the truth. It's my many years as a counselor for sex abuse and child abuse survivors. This is the hardest month because everybody doesn't live up, their families and their life doesn't live up to the fantasy and doesn't live up to the either monetary or even, the love, all of that stuff. We always just, December, nobody looked forward to it, meaning on my staff, because it was the hardest month. And then I switched to the job of being an ESL teacher, where all of my students are obviously immigrants, refugees, needing to learn English. And it's the same, and it's that thing again of they don't even really know what to do in America, how we do it. And so they're kind of lost in all of the hoopla and Christmas showing up in Macy's at September.
Yeah.
So both sides of those two, it's a hard month for a lot of people. And the fantasy has always been built that this is and I hear it, you hear it, we all hear it, this is the happiest month of the year, and it's not.
Yeah.
Well, there's my little happy.
Yeah, I think after a certain age, maybe you realize it's really not. And I don't know, I actually, my niece and nephew are, well, my niece is going to be 17 and, it's her 17, she's going to be 17 on the 17th. Huh, interesting. And my nephew's going to be 14. No, 15. Oh my gosh. And so, no, 14. And their window of it being a joyful thing, really, I mean, that generation is a lot more realistic than some generations before, to use the old realism and pessimism play. So I don't know how much longer it's going to be successfully marketed as the happiest time of year. We'll see what happens with that. So yeah, but I feel you. Nancy, did you have a question?
No, I've had a short story. Robina had never experienced Christmas trees. And so she wasn't with us at this time last year. And then she said the one thing she wanted this year was to go out and we'd buy a Christmas tree and decorate it, which we've done. And I think she's enjoyed it a lot. And now she's doing lots of cooking and having a good time with that.
Yeah.
So.
Whereas we haven't had a Christmas tree in years.
Yeah, I like to go out and buy or just pick up, they cut off the bottom of the trees and I like to pick up the branches because I like the smell in the house. But then, so this year we had a tree and it's pretty.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I'm all for foliage, I mean, if you want to haul a Douglas fir into the living room and put ribbons on it, like, I think you should be able to do it year round. I think it's actually crazier if we only do it once a year. We buy these stands, we buy all this stuff. We could have it in there every, we could just get a new one every 2 months and dress it up for different seasons. And this is my, here's my cactus and here's my Douglas fir, that I'm having here. So I'd be fine with that. One of the things, Karen, we'll go to you next. I did want to address the other question about Santa and Elf on the Shelf. I don't think I quite touched on that because the good bad dichotomy, anyone who's had therapy knows that, like, there's no such thing as a bad person. Like, I'm not a bad boy. You're not a bad girl. Like, and I think that there's an aspect of, we are who we are and we do things, and we shouldn't be judged necessarily by the worst or even the bottom 20% of everything we've done in our life. And I think the making a list and checking it twice, it comes really out of the Jewish tradition of the Book of Life, writing the names. And the Elf on the Shelf is just creepy. This idea of this thing like squirming around our house, in different places. I have a friend who did it like 1 year and he just would never do it again. Cause like the idea of like this like juvenile looking, not old, not young thing, like peering out at his children all over the house throughout he didn't want to get them used to that or thinking it was okay. So, but going back to the good bad dichotomy, I do think that the Santa and the lists and all this kind of stuff has a little bit of a telling someone they are a bad child instead, or a good child instead of a child who does things that are regrettable or things that are lovely and charming. So I'm not a parent, so I don't know how many devices of social control we really need to keep our children in line. My guess is that's one that most people, at least on this call, could do without. They could probably make do with other things. But anyway, just to touch on that, I realized I hadn't really answered that part of the question. Karen.
Well, I hate to put such a downer on everything, but I love Christmas. It is
Sure.
my happiest time. And
Yeah.
what I've noticed, we never did any of the good bad. And we love what Cooper, the tradition that Cooper started was, we just happen to have this collection of stupid stuffed animals, including elves, right? And he would put them in like the microwave. So I go to use the microwave, and it would come popping out. He'd put them in the freezer. And it just became this game we played. And it's just been something awesome for us. What I was really going to say was, in our neighborhood, we've gotten a lot closer, right, in our hood. All our dogs know each other a lot better. And we used to be one of the few people who would put up lights because Richard's ridiculous. And, it's just, you could see our house from space,
That's my line.
And what I've noticed is that so many people are doing it. So many more people in our neighborhood are doing it. We're actually, talking together and doing lots more together, admiring each other's work, admiring each other's gardens. And
it cheers things up.
It has cheered things
really
up for us
does.
here out in Pearl City. So if you do need cheering up, just do a drive-by.
Yeah, it's a complicated. So here's this is kind of where I come down on it. As the minister at a church, I get to do lots of celebration and I get to do that, and I love that piece of it. But in a sense, there's a part of my heart that needs to be there, and it's almost more important for me as the minister to acknowledge the pain that this season causes some people than it is that I acknowledge the celebration, because the world is celebrating. Like, we can get celebration in lots of places. So you'll notice in worship that the Christmas time, for me at least, and maybe a different minister would do it differently, because we have the pageant where we do so much celebration. I do try to keep the Sunday services a little more in tune with the complexities of what's going on. So I'm admitting my bias toward those who are suffering or maybe really feeling the feelings this time of year. And maybe in a different life, in a different time, it would be more like, but anyway, I'm just saying that is from my pastoral sort of side where I'm coming from this time of year most often. So, but yeah. We could do the lightning round. Got 4 minutes left. Haven't gotten any toughies. No one's got a toughie? Anything to? No? It's all right. I mean, I already admitted to representing the Koch brothers. All right, Mike, I can count on you.
Yeah, this is a tough question for all of us, and it's not one to which I expect an answer, in part because Bill and I this afternoon, a 2-hour presentation, streaming presentation, live streaming from the Resist Fascism people. And the question that they spent 2 hours on was, how do you explain the fact that 74 million people voted for the guy that's on his way out? And so I've heard lots of answers to that question already, but you wanted a tough question, so I just throw that out there.
Yeah. Honestly, my take on that was, I have some friends from all over the country The first election happened, was gearing up while I was in divinity school. A lot of people from all over the country there, and many people from parts of the country had no doubt who was going to win that election. And it was going to be the person who did, because they were from Arizona, they were from South Carolina, they were from Georgia, they were from Alabama. It wasn't even, and they were not supporting that candidate, but just they're like, trust me, we are from America, like parts of America that you've never seen, never been to, don't have any desire to learn about, don't have a desire to see what's going on. That's who's going to win. Now, they later said they probably won't win a second term because of what people will discover about them. But it's still the second most votes any president has received. Granted, and I'm going to get to you, Richard, I see you. But granted, the population of America is growing and growing. So it's not really fair to just, it's not fair to count just the numbers. We should go by percentage. So I don't want to get into too much of that, but so the answer is I can't really explain it in a way that would make a ton of sense, except friends of mine who've lived it and seen the parts of the country that do vote for him had no doubt who was going to win that, based on all of their friends, all of their family. So we are going to be reckoning with that for a long time, but that's one thing I would just share as far as the wisdom. We're going to go Richard and then Mike. Richard? You got to unmute.
Yeah, Karen. Okay, I just wanted to add on to that. I've been reading some nursing literature, a movement in nursing called Caritas, and a book about suffering and the relationship between passion and suffering. And when I see that much passion expressed for that person, I have to look at what is the suffering that's at the base of that. So what I'm seeing is that there are 70 some million people who are experiencing some fairly serious kind of suffering. And that's what needs to be responded to.
Yeah. I could say it's mostly people who want to ignore the history of this country. That probably represents who just can't face it. There's some part of their human psyche that does not want to look at what the Confederacy means, does not want to look at the history of Native Americans, does not want to look at slavery, wants only to look at their whiteness and that fable they've been sold, and that is the core of the best that is holding them above like the lowest rung, that they think is keeping them just out of that lowest level of the caste system in this country. And yeah, it's pain that is likely keeping the folks there. That's what voters have always, I mean, pitting poor white voters against Black people has been happening since the 1800s. It's not a new playbook. He wasn't even using like the playbook from the 1940s in Europe, shall we say. He was using the playbook that America wrote. So, Mike, you had a question?
I won't. I have a closing story for you. Apropos the good and bad with respect to Santa Claus. One gentleman appeared before St. Peter, and St. Peter looked at the book and said, you know, I got to call the big guy over to look at this one. And he got over to take a look, and St. Peter said, I don't know what to do with this guy. He actually never committed a sin. He never did a bad thing. He never broke a rule. He's never done anything wrong. And God took a look at the big book and took a look at the guy and said, your reward is that you have to go back to earth and live it all over again until you get it right.
Nice. Good. I had a question. I know we're getting on time. I'm not sure what it means. What are you going to do next? I'm probably going to watch TV. That's my.
MASH is on.
If you mean like in life or something like that, you're looking at it. This is what I'm doing next. So yeah. So we've covered a lot of ground today. If anyone's got a burning question or an itching question, maybe talk to a doctor. But if you've got something you got to get out that has a short answer, I'm happy to do it. If not, we can all get to our evenings. So
This
all right.
is my evening.
Yeah. I meant the remainder of our evenings, sure. Well, thank you everyone for the lively and wonderful discussion. Like I said, I don't.
TJ.
Yeah, my pleasure. And yeah, everyone have a lovely evening. Looking forward to hearing from Molly Brewer on Sunday. She'll be wonderful. She comes recommended by Sherry Holiday, who is our minister from Rochester, who spoke on women's suffrage anniversary. So yeah, should be wonderful. All right, thanks everyone.
Allison has.
Hi, Allison. What's up?
Hi. What are you recommending on Netflix these days?
Well, that's a big question. What am I watching or what am I recommending? I assume people
watching.
Queen's Gambit.
Yeah,
Allison, Queen's Gambit.
If you haven't watched Queen's Gambit, you should. It's great.
And the Trial of the Chicago Seven.
Yes.
Yeah, that also.
Brilliant.
I did not see it, but it got great reviews.
It's worth seeing. I was still really surprised.
Yeah, I mean I'm still doing a lot of where Netflix is concerned, a lot of baking shows still, and I have a little bit of a guilty pleasure of Supernatural, to be perfectly honest. I don't know why. I think it's just baffling to me that that's on for 15 seasons, and anything that can exist for 15 seasons, should be looked at, as sort of. But it's inane, and it's what I've been watching a little bit of lately, to be perfectly honest.
What's that? Which one are you referring to?
I really don't want to recommend it. It's called Supernatural. It's about these brothers that like fight ghosts. It's basically just Ghostbusters as a darker investigative solving crimes kind of silliness. So
yeah, what was the one we tried for a while? It was Strange something or
Stranger
other.
Things.
Stranger Things. It's not
It's not for
satisfying.
everyone.
We're still working on Schitt's Creek in the fourth or fifth year, loving it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Well, have a lovely evening, and thanks, everyone. I'll talk to you real soon.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.